Like every other normal, rational, sane human being out there, I don't like EA. This wasn't always the case. I used to fucking love them back in the EA Sports big days when they made my favourite game of all time. Yes, SSX Tricky is seriously my favourite game ever, fucking fight me. But then they made all of their infamous whoopsies, like releasing unfinished games with Day 1 DLC, taking an old beloved franchise and completely ruining it, and EA Origins. Just that whole platform in general. So yeah, I'm not exactly EA's #1 fan, which is why it pains me, it tortures me, it kills me to have to admit that Battlefield 1, the latest game published by EA and developed by DICE, is actually pretty good. Curse you, bastards. So, Battlefield 1 is the latest installment in the Battlefield franchise. It takes place in World War I, and annoyingly, I quite like it. I don't necessarily think it's as amazing as some critics are saying, but I still had fun with it. The only Battlefield game I'd played before this one was a bit of Battlefield 4, and I wasn't too crazy about that game, so I went into Battlefield 1 with no expectations. Let's start with the campaign, because that was the thing I was most interested in at the beginning, mainly because of the setting. There really are not a lot of World War I games out there. Off the top of my head, the only ones I can remember are Valiant Hearts and... No, actually, that's pretty much the only one I can remember. So I was excited to see what they did with the story, and in Battlefield 1, the campaign is made up of these mini war stories, all telling different stories about different individuals who fought in the war. And if I had to use one word to describe the story as a whole, I'd say it's interesting. I don't know, to be honest, I'm kind of torn on the story, because on one hand, there are a lot of powerful, emotional moments in the very well presented cutscenes, but on the other hand, some of the war stories just seem too short to properly get invested in. There are 5 war stories in total, not counting the opening mission. 2 of them have 4 levels, 2 of them have 3 levels, and 1 of them has 2 levels. In my opinion, the longer ones are the best, if only because they get more time to flesh out the characters, so when bad things happen to them, because let's be real, this is a war game, eventually bad things are going to happen, it carries more impact. In some of the short ones, I don't think they get enough time to let us get to know the characters. For example, there's this one story where at the beginning, this old Australian guy and this young Australian guy meet each other for the first time ever. Then there's a short mission where no dialogue is exchanged between the characters, and then they're best friends. They're basically like father and son now. You get that? You got that? You need me to explain that again? And at the end of the same story, spoilers, I guess, the old Australian guy sacrifices himself to save the young Australian guy, and I know I was supposed to be appreciating what an emotional scene this was, but instead I was just thinking, why should I care about this? I met this character like half an hour ago and I barely know anything about him. I know I'm making a big deal out of this when I shouldn't be, but my point is I feel like it would have been better if they did like 3 war stories with 6 levels each, as opposed to what they actually did. But I know there are a lot of Battlefield fans out there who don't give 2 shillings about the campaign and are only really interested in the multiplayer, which to the game's credit is pretty damn fun. I know a lot of people really love the Conquest mode, where it's like a huge war with planes and tanks and whatever that is. Whoa, Black Betty, bam-a-lam, whoa, Black Betty, bam-a-lam. And now there's a new Operations mode, where it's like a bunch of mini conquests back to back, and apparently they're based off of real life battles that actually happened. I'm personally more of a team deathmatch kind of guy, but for those of you who like the conquests in the previous games, the Operations mode will probably be right up your alley. From what I can tell, the multiplayer is pretty similar to what it used to be. There are different classes with different kinds of guns for each class, and teamwork is pretty important, working together with your squad, using strategy and tactics and getting murdered by tanks all the fucking time! And not that I even have to mention this, because it's pretty much what Battlefield is known for at this point, but this game is absolutely gorgeous. The environments are all very nice and well rendered, and the game runs at a pretty consistent 60 FPS on PlayStation, which is surprising considering the last 3 Battlefield games were apparently unplayable at launch. The old school weapons are all pretty cool and the destruction physics are awesome, so all in all the multiplayer gets a thumbs up from me. So like I said in the beginning of the video, I like Battlefield 1. I personally don't think the story is as amazing as some people say, but I did still enjoy it, especially the first two stories. And even though I suck at it, I did enjoy the multiplayer. I just fucking hated the tanks, because they- oh, what the hell was that?! So basically, campaign, interesting, multiplayer, fun, visuals, great. Except for the glitches. Those aren't very great. Battlefield 1 gets a Foxtrot, Delta, Charlie, Tango, Vimto, Fanta, Sprite, Subway, subscribe, please.